So wait, you're telling me that the Game Master is sending us to a festival at a village in the middle of nowhere where everybody dresses up in giant mosquito masks and celebrates that time that a bunch of teenagers got lost in the woods and mistakenly identified some kind of swamp creature as an evil witch? Yeah, I'm sure this isn't a setup at all. I totally haven't seen that movie. Today, let's talk about the Mosquito Witch from Monsters of Myth on today's episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Happy Halloween, travelers and tourists. My name is Mark, and I am the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I am a storyteller that you know is going to love any monster with entries labeled Legion and Hemoprophet. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at the Mosquito Witch from the book Lost Omens, Monsters of Myth. It is October, spooky season is here, and the time has come to dive into some of the creepier options that Paizo gives game masters and players to enjoy with Pathfinder 2e. So what I'm going to do this month is dive into some of the more esoteric options from various Paizo publications that I think lend themselves well to Halloween-esque stories. Now, that does mean that some of my more regular series on this channel will be taking a break this month, though don't expect all of them to be on pause. For example, if everything goes according to plan, Classic Introductions The Thaumaturge should be on deck for next week, but I just want to spend some time celebrating all of the creepy, crazy, and terrifying options that Paizo gives for us to tell some really unique stories. I am going to be splitting my content into two separate groups. My Sunday content is going to be focused primarily on game masters and things that they might be able to use, and then my Wednesday content will be focused as normal on stuff that is going to be more interesting to players, but hopefully both sides of the screen will learn about some interesting options from the channel this month. And all of that being said, unfortunately a few months ago I never had a chance to properly review this book, Lost Omens, Monsters of Myth. This book dives into several famous monsters from all around the Golarion setting and gives game masters a toolkit for a lot of very unique and interesting encounters. Now, I may have never had my chance to properly review the book, but there is a lot of fun content in this book, so what I'm going to be doing for game masters this month is, as part of my Sunday series, I'm going to be highlighting some of my favorite monsters from the Monsters of Myth book that you might want to use in your stories, starting today with the Mosquito Witch. But before we do all of that, don't forget all of the YouTube stuff. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And you can check out my free Discord and my Patreon. Both of those will be linked in the video description. But as always, the best thing you can do is jump down into the comments and be part of the conversation. But with all of that out of the way, let's get started. So, what is the Mosquito Witch? Well, before I dive into that, do be aware that there will obviously be some spoilers in this video. So if you are a player, this is a video where you might not want to go too far. I'm going to try to put the player-friendly content towards the beginning of this video, and then save the Game Master-specific content towards the end of the video, and I'll kind of let you know when the Game Master-specific stuff is coming. But if you are a player in Pathfinder 2e, definitely send your Game Masters this way, because they might enjoy hearing about this monster. The story of the Mosquito Witch begins decades ago outside of a town known as Shimmerford in the River Kingdoms. A group of teenagers wandered off into the woods. Maybe it was some kind of dare, maybe they were just trying to escape and have some fun for the night. But whatever their original intent was, they returned several days later, bloody and harried and with fear in their eyes, speaking of a terrible monster that had tormented them during their time in the woods. This is the first known record of anyone encountering what came to be known as the Mosquito Witch, a mysterious and hard-to-track creature living in the swamps outside of Shimmerford. Now, to be honest, true sightings of this creature are a little bit rare and hard to pin down, meaning that it's kind of become a folk legend in the area around Shimmerford, and there's even a prominent festival celebrating the Mosquito Witch where people eat witch bread and dress up as a mosquito person and just kind of have this goofy celebration of a local town legend. But it's one of those legends that's just a little too persistent, and there are rumors with just a little bit too much truth for people to truly dismiss this story as nothing but the fanciful fears of a group of teenagers. And as a result, over the decades, many people have gone looking for the legendary Mosquito Witch, and with every attempted hunt, the legend continues to grow. Now, for players who might be interested in the Mosquito Witch, Lost Omens Monsters of Myth does actually allow the Mosquito Witch to serve as a rare witch patron for players who might be using the witch class. The Mosquito Witch patron gives access to the primal spell list and has access to a unique spell called Buzzing Bites, where you swarm the target with biting insects. This, by the way, is a really good introduction to the description of the Mosquito Witch, a terrifying hybrid of human and, well, mosquito that has a terrible connection with pests and vermin of all sorts. So if you're looking to play a witch with the creepiest possible patron, this might be the option for you. But players, if you're worried about too much in the way of spoilers, now might be the time to step aside and let Game Masters learn a little bit more. Alright, Game Masters, does the Mosquito Witch sound like something you might be interested in using for one of your stories? Well, let's dive in and talk a little bit more about this interesting but obscure creature. First up, let's talk basics. The Mosquito Witch is a CR10 Fey creature with a full stat block provided in Monsters of Myth. You can also find a link to the stat block of this creature on the Archives of Nethys, which I will have linked in the video description below. As you might expect for a creature called the Mosquito Witch, it has the ability to deal a solid amount of bleed damage with its attacks, and it comes with a couple of frightening abilities, Haunting Gaze and Terror from Within. And overall, you can expect the Mosquito Witch to have a lot of unique powers tied to vermin, such as the eponymous mosquito that is in its name. But let's talk a little bit more about the Mosquito Witch's story and the way that Paizo sets up this creature. First up is the town of Shimmerford in the River Kingdoms. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I read through several of my Pathfinder 1st edition and 2nd edition books, and as far as I can tell, Shimmerford is not an established town anywhere in the River Kingdoms in a publication that I personally have. Not going to say it's not out there, but the presentation of Shimmerford is very much of a small town that you could drop in almost any setting and make use of the Mosquito Witch. You can tell that they kind of made the town of Shimmerford a relatively flexible location that storytellers can easily adapt to other settings. One of the things that Paizo does in Monsters of Myth is they also try to set up these Monsters of Myth with stories that are intended to last for a decent length of time. They're not really a one-shot story, they're more of a story arc style of villain where players are going to invest a serious amount of time before they ever, well, if they ever, actually face the creature in question. And you can kind of get the sense of that with the Mosquito Witch. As I said, you have a town with decades of stories that go back to unreliable narrators of teenagers who got lost in the woods. And there are a variety of myths that actually surround exactly who or what the Mosquito Witch might be, meaning that player characters who are investigating into the Mosquito Witch are very likely to have to chase down several false leads before they get to the heart of the matter. Paizo also does a good job of giving us the setting of the town of Shimmerford and the Mosquito Witch festival that the town celebrates as a fun way to kind of hook players into this narrative where you almost don't know how serious the story is when it begins. Sure, many people have gone looking for the Mosquito Witch, but has anyone ever really found them? One of the possible story threads that Paizo gives you is just to have bandits attacking the adventurers who go out looking for the Mosquito Witch. You can essentially have villains who are taking advantage of the local legend to try to line their own pockets. And if you're a GM who's feeling rather insidious, you can even play up this angle, letting bandits attack the players, only to have the bandits themselves get attacked when the real Mosquito Witch shows up. That's basically horror movie 101, right? But all of this kind of leads to what is the central question of the Mosquito Witch: where does this creature come from? And Paizo kind of gives you several different options of how you might choose to work the Mosquito Witch into your setting. They don't nail down a specific, this is where the Mosquito Witch is from, or this is what this creature is. They just give you some options that you as a storyteller can run with, or you can even insert your own. But they kind of give you three major theories that circulate around the town of Shimmerford that your PCs might encounter. One is a somewhat generic, whimsical fae creature that's just kind of taken interest in the town. The second option references an obscure Pathfinder deity called Golarion, which is basically a monstrous mosquito. And then the final option relates the Mosquito Witch in one fashion or another to the Demon Lord Descari that is featured prominently in the Wrath of the Righteous adventure path from Pathfinder 1st Edition. Now, are any of these the true origin? We honestly don't know, but that's part of the fun. Paizo lets you pick. And when I say that Paizo lets you pick, they actually let you pick the stats of the Mosquito Witch. So this is one of the things I think is really cool in this book. Paizo gives us three different options as variant builds for the Mosquito Witch that kind of correspond to those three different legends that I mentioned earlier. The first and most explicitly villainous is called the Leech, and this is the one that just really doubles down on the mosquito monster portion of the Mosquito Witch. If you're going for the Golarion storyline, this is probably the one you'd go for. And while the base stats remain mostly the same, the Leech version of the Mosquito Witch gets access to a special ritual called the Mosquito Blight that, well, you can probably guess how terrible that is. If you're looking for a pure horror villain to throw at your players, possibly for a Halloween-style game, the Leech version of the Mosquito Witch is probably something that's going to make your player's skin crawl and is definitely a fun concept. A second, less malicious, but certainly still capable of being malevolent option is the Swarm Seer, where the Mosquito Witch is essentially a fae creature that just has a supernatural bond of some kind with different vermin, especially mosquitoes. One of the fun twists of this version of the Mosquito Witch is their ability to literally see through any vermin that they are connected to, allowing them to use essentially swamp pests as an incredible spy network, which could help explain why the Mosquito Witch is so adept at avoiding confrontation. This version of the Mosquito Witch pictures the creature as having developed a weird curiosity surrounding the town of Shimmerford, where the town really doesn't understand why the creature is there, and the creature is not explicitly hostile, but if you get too close, it can still be dangerous. And it is worth emphasizing, yes, can still be dangerous. The Swarm Seer version of the Mosquito Witch comes with an ability called Fecund Wounds, where they can make wounds on creatures erupt with different pests and vermin. I hope you're enjoying all of these wonderful images. Then, of course, you have my favorite variation of the Mosquito Witch, and one where I feel like the storytelling potential is truly maximized, the Hemoprophet. The Mosquito Witch in this story is pictured as a creature that has the ability to detect when others are struggling with a decision or a problem of some kind where they don't know what to do or where to go, the Hemoprophet Mosquito Witch might visit them in their dreams and help them out for a price. A dreaming creature that is dealing with an issue of some kind may be visited by the Hemoprophet in the middle of the night, and if they subconsciously accept the help of the Mosquito Witch will drain some of their blood and then use a little bit of blood that was drained to write advice or clues or other information that the person might find helpful nearby on the ground. There's a lot of creepy give and take in this version of the Mosquito Witch, and I'm just going to say I love it. But as potentially helpful as the Hemoprophet may seem, this help is not without risk. First off, this creature is draining your blood, and the Mosquito Witch is a monster, which means it kind of doesn't care if it drains too much blood. And then there's the whole problem of there is a note scrawled in blood near where you wake up that offers information about what is probably a very private issue in your life that your neighbors then might be able to read, meaning that if you want the Hemoprophet to help you, you're probably traveling deep into dangerous territory to even seek that help in the first place. As you can tell, the fear factor for stories involving especially the Hemoprophet Mosquito Witch is it is top notch. But that is a quick introduction to the Mosquito Witch, one of the monsters of myth introduced to us in Lost Omens Monsters of Myth. Obviously, there's more juicy tidbits inside the book, and if you're interested, I definitely recommend checking it out. But the time has come for me to turn the conversation over to you. So, let me know, what are your thoughts about the Mosquito Witch? Do you find this monster interesting? And which variation of the Mosquito Witch would you be the most interested in using at your gaming table? Also, would you be interested in using the Mosquito Witch as a witch patron, either as a player or allowing one of your players to use it? Be sure to leave your thoughts down below, and let me know which other monsters from Monsters of Myth you are excited to hear about. Some of them may show up later this month. As always, remember to do the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, check out my free Discord and my Patreon. But as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Have a wonderful day.